We are going live. Welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool and Jonathan. Today in the green room, we've got a serial killer with us. Is that right? No, that's right. Different Dahmer. I'm sure he's heard that joke a million times. So, just like just like you get Taylor jokes all the time, right?
Oh no. Well, yeah, the Jonathan Taylor Thomas. I still get that guy has not been in acting. I haven't seen him in anything in like 20 years, but I still.
Yeah.
And
then there's the football player.
That's
Jonathan
right.
Taylor.
Yeah, that's more common today with the running back.
No, we've got Brady Dahmer coming
Brady
on the
Dahmer.
show. We're going to be talking about Blindspots. He's just written a book called Blindspots Handbook.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to dive into that. I mean, it doesn't apply to me. I don't have any blind spots, but I'm sure for some of our listeners.
I mean, we're both good. I don't know what this book's going to teach us, but
yeah. I mean, most of our listeners, it doesn't apply either, so.
So he's the author, brand new book, just put it out, blind spots, how to prepare for what you don't see coming. Brady is passionate about equipping audiences with practical tools to tackle hidden tasks or hidden risks and overlooked opportunities in marketing and project management. He draws on years of experience collaborating with big brands and creative teams. He likes to simplify complex challenges into actionable strategies that empower leaders, marketers, and entrepreneurs to stay one step ahead. So interesting to dig into this book and see what it's about. I'm sure that there's some area, Sean, that you and I are maybe we have a blind spot. Who knows? I mean, my wife tells me I got blind spots all the time, but I don't listen to it. So
yeah. I mean, you gotta consider the source, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Well, let's welcome Brady onto the show.
Oh, here we go. Maybe we should bring him in. Welcome to the show,
Sean.
Brady.
Hey, Jonathan. How's it going, guys? Yeah. Awesome. Love the intro, by the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And this is live in front of a studio audience as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we've got already a comment that we're drunk.
Yeah. David Dutton is trolling us. So
it's okay. He's welcome to troll us anytime.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
He thinks that the comment's going automatically, but he doesn't realize that I have control over the comments. So, but anyway.
So welcome to the show. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, guys.
So give us a teaser, Brady, of why people should stick around or why David should stick around since he's the only one watching.
Well, I've it's funny because I had this idea for a book for a little while. It started off as a small checklist, and then I was watching finally on a Sunday afternoon, just hanging out, and a Steven Seagal movie came on, and there was a scene in the movie where supposedly the bad guys were fighting Steven on top of this train, as one does.
Of course.
And they had in fighting they saw him fall off the train, and so when they gathered themselves up and went back to the boss, they told the boss that the Steven's character had fallen off.
They took care of business. No worries.
No worries, right? So, and the boss, asked him, "Are you sure?" And now, of course, all the henchmen are, yes, of course, nodding their heads, somewhat, suspiciously. And he came out with this line, which I think just kind of resonated with me because reason for the book and reason, again, those blind spots in our lives is that the lead henchman said, assumption is a mother of all f-ups. And it was just when we don't, know and we assume, that's really when things can kind of turn to the worst. And of course, in the movie, those assumptions that he fell off the train obviously came back to, haunt them, as the movie progressed. But the goal of what I was, really what I was trying to capture for so many years is like what the business mistakes people make, and how can I create something that they can kind of learn from everybody else's mistakes and avoid them and things like that. So it is really, it's kind of like understanding what you don't know and just giving you that power, that knowledge, that insight. Because when you do, you can make those better business decisions. You can feel more confident about all the areas of business because, being an entrepreneur, there's a lot going on all the time. So if I can just kind of drop some little nuggets along the way so that people can, know what they're getting into, know how to make decisions, when it comes to marketing and branding, from the start to the finish, how to hire somebody, how to better manage a project, all those sorts of things. If I can give that insight from my years of doing it, as well as, all of my friends and colleagues, this is what the book's about. So
very cool. Yeah. That was the longest teaser we've ever had, Brady. So. Way to go. All right. Yeah. So let's talk about our beverages. So I am abstaining today, but I'm not drinking nothing. I'm just not drinking alcohol this weekend. So I'll start just to get it out of the way, but I'm drinking Redmond's Relight. No, they're not a sponsor, but it'd be cool if they were. So I'm drinking my electrolytes. Brady, what are you having? You've got a cool, kind of a cool marketing idea here.
Yeah. Let me crack this open for you guys here. Yeah, we have a local beer from Hoyne Brewing off of Vancouver Island, and the beer is called Dark Matter.
Yes, Dark Matter.
It is. It's not listed as anything, but they don't really say what it is. But it is.
Literally on the website. Delicious. Yeah, literally on this website it says Dark Matter is the only beer we make where we don't say on the bottle what style it is. This is for very good reason. Even we don't know. It is more easily described by what it isn't. It is not as roasted as a stout, nor is it as sweet or high in alcohol as a porter. Don't even mention brown ale in the same breath. Like the Northern Lights, it is seductively elusive, bringing the mystery of the universe into your glass. It's pretty good copy, pretty good kind of marketing idea. I like that.
And also too, if you scroll down for the taste, we've got subtle hints of dark chocolate aroma with roasted malt.
So they know a little something.
Yeah.
They've tested the ABV, so they know a little something about it. Yeah, cool bottle, Northern Lights, because you're up in Vancouver, correct?
Yep. That's correct. Yep. And this is just brewed on the island, just a little bit west of me here. So,
okay.
Yep.
So have you poured it, or do you have a glass, or you can drink it out of the?
I'm going to drink it right out of the can here. So, Yep.
So we won't know the color or anything.
It's a deceptively light beer. It's dark, but it's very light on the palate. So, it's very delicious. To tell you the truth.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, I've actually filled my my large mug here with iced tea this morning. Unfortunately, so it just filled with that. Anyways, delicious, guys.
Good. We'll get a rating here in just a second. Jonathan, what do you got? You on your Pilsner kick?
I'm on my Pilsner kick. I've got a Peebo. I guess I'm pronouncing this right. It's a dry hop Pilsner from Creature Comforts in collaboration with Firestone Walker, drawing inspiration from both Peebo Pills and Bebo Pills. Peebo combines some of the best elements into something completely new. It's 5.2%. So I've already been sipping it a little, so I can give you a hint of where it's going to be.
All right. Well, let's just go ahead and get Brady's.
All right.
So Brady, we rate on a score of 1 to 5 pints, 5 being the best. Where do you put that?
I give it a strong 4.5. Yeah,
right. Cool.
It's delicious. I could do quite a few of these. So, yep.
All right. Well, carry on. Keep drinking.
Yeah.
Jonathan,
I'm going to go 3.5.
Okay.
So nothing special. I like a good Pilsner, but this doesn't.
Better than last week.
Yeah, better than last week. Much better than last week. Last week was a dud.
Yeah,
that was awful.
2 bad beers last week for sure. So
yeah, yep.
All right. Well, all right, gentlemen, let's jump in. So, Brady, give us you told us a little bit about the book. It says you've been in the business for over 30 years. And this is what I found interesting, looking at kind of the description on Amazon. It says it's more than just a handbook. It's a practical survival guide for marketers, project managers, and creative professionals who are serious about keeping projects on track and delivering exceptional results. But it is a marketing book, marketing handbook. So That's an interesting group of people for a book: marketers and project managers and creative professionals. So what's the kind of Venn diagram there of those three?
Yeah, the Venn diagram. It's a book, kind of those of hard lessons that sort of or lessons that one learns the hard way in business in dealing with either creatives or clients. This iteration of the book was written specifically for small businesses because a lot of them learn, how to do, their marketing plans, learn all about marketing and advertising, learn what they might need to do, some do the research, but it's also there's a gap in knowledge of like how do you hire the right sort of supplier, the right kind of marketing person, because chances are you're going to be using them and working with them for a longer time, unlike like a repairman or like any other kind of service. This is somebody that you kind of hire long term. So making sure that you're finding the right person and asking the right questions, because it is in our industry it's very relationship based, and doing all of that, it's right. And also just as I was writing it too, finding things as simple as where from a client side, what they need to know in kind of working with someone and project managing it. So that's kind of that's the gap of knowledge, is like being able to kind of work and understand how to best work and how to find the best people to get the most out of your project. And I was going to say one last thing is that I focus on the small business because I always feel that they have kind of the most to lose in a project, with a lot of creatives. If something doesn't work out, there's multiple stories of creatives can just kind of walk away and then be like, sorry, that campaign didn't work or whatever else. And what it comes down to is the small business or entrepreneur that's it's trying to get their business up off the ground. It's that revenue, it's that money that kind of goes out the door. So it's kind of a little bit of an educational piece where it helps them understand what the questions asked to make sure that their investment kind of they invest in, the little money that they do have for this goes a lot further. That's kind of the gap. So where creatives can kind of walk away, and as I've got multiple stories of just people like that kind of they've gotten the check and they said sorry, it doesn't work, and kind of left the client hanging. So this is to help clients better understand what to do.
Yeah, very cool. So what are some of the like, give us a little glimpse, like what are some of the chapter titles? I don't see a preview on, I don't have it in front of me. So what are some of the
great
jump in somewhere
question. Yeah, no,
titles. Honestly, share some stories too. We want to hear the good stuff where people have gotten screwed over.
Yeah, as I go through these, I'll share individual stories. Yeah, it's the book is kind of laid out with as like a framework of like from the very beginning, before you even hire anybody, it's kind of getting your own sort of your own assets, your own things, both internally but also psychologically ready for working with someone. So it's broken down kind of into the 4 chapters: internal prep, building the right team, running the project, and then project wrap. So a lot of the first part of the book is the internal prep of really getting your assets together, but also doing that research of understanding and helping clients better understand what, in working with creatives, what information they can give us to really help us do our jobs better. So understanding who their customers are, who their competition is, know their what and know their why and things like that.
So that's a good, let's stop there for a second.
Yeah,
so
sure.
How much of that do you feel like is the business owner's responsibility versus the marketing or creative person's responsibility? I guess it depends on if it's a marketing team you're hiring or if you're hiring a creative team, but like, I think there's some business owners that don't know that stuff. Yeah. So are you saying they should, where do you draw that line between hiring an expert to help you figure that out and then you yourself already knowing it?
I think for the most part, it's just having that part of this is asking the questions like how much do you know, because it's this comes back to this sort of like why are you in business and what is your business plan? you know, so leveraging that knowledge of what you're doing off that business plan. And you know that sometimes the success or failure of any kind of company is, you know, knowing, you know, who their clients are, what their pain points are, you know, all those sort of things. You know, if you take a basic kind of marketing class of what are the pain points your clients and customers are really trying to get through, and also too what your competition is doing, you know, where are they in the market, and what you're competing against. Because it's kind of, you know, there's so many sports analogies that, you know, if you show up unprepared, you know, if you don't understand who you're competing against, you know, and you just kind of just show up, you know, there's it's the more prepared you are, the better, you know, and that's kind of really what we're asking people to do. It's just, you know, if you don't know, this is a really serious thing, because I guess ultimately what can kind of come out of that, Sean, is that if you don't know and you're just saying, hey, do something nice or pretty for us and just do some marketing for us, sure, well, you know, a lot of people will just be like, hey, sure, we'll spend the money, we'll put up a website for you, we'll do, you know, a social campaign or all these things that will look pretty and nice, but you know, there's nothing really tangible or actionable in them. There's nothing with any kind of real kind of, you know, meat on them, nothing that will kind of propel or grow the business. It will just kind of look nice and sit there. So if you don't understand those things, it's the mechanics of how your business and how your industry works. And, you know, any capable, you know, marketer needs to kind of know those things, to know what kind of, you know, what levers to pull, what buttons to push to activate the audience to act the way you want them to act, whether that's to show up at an opening or, you know, purchase a product or, you know, sign up for something. So the more you know what your audience wants and needs and where your competition is landing, you know, the easier it is for us to do our job, and the better you'll grow.
Kind of like we talk about copywriting a lot. It's the same copywriting. It's the same in sales. It's the same in marketing. Like most of your legwork goes into understanding what your clients, you know, researching their background, who their competition is, understanding, you know, what their true needs are, and doing a lot of research. You can't just, you know, create something for them that's just the same as, you know, what their competition's doing. You're trying to help them do something a little bit different or help them do something a little bit better.
Yes.
So, you know, I think a lot of people, you know, misunderstand the fact that like most of the work goes into really understanding your business or the business you're working with, and researching and finding out everything you can about that before you jump into actually doing the work.
100%. And that's kind of the more you know, the more you can kind of make those better decisions, you know, and you can put like, if you put everything in and sort of, you can come up with really sort of not so much tangible, but really kind of actionable, sort of like, this is kind of where we're going. And you can kind of, if everybody, you know, is at a level of certain professionalism, they can all see where this, you know, where that kind of the direction goes. And also too, the more research you do, you can kind of, you know, narrow it down to something maybe really a lot more specific and fine-tuned. But, you know, if it doesn't really kind of work, you know, then where to maybe shift it off to, or sort of, you know, a tuning of how to kind of rework some of the language a little bit. Like if one word doesn't work, but a lot of it's landing, then maybe just change, you know, as you know, one or two words, and it might just sort of, you know, just change. But it comes from a basis of knowledge, of understanding how people want to be spoken to, like from a copyright standpoint. But, you know, who are they? What are their pain points? And how, you know, where are you finding them, you know, in their day, in their process, in their sort of in the research for whatever you have, and what will trigger them to kind of, you know, grab your product or, you know, hire you for the service. So that's kind of, it's really important to kind of know and understand, you know, who your clients are. One of the key things that we kind of bring up too is like, if you're already if you've been operating, you know, for quite a few years, go back and, you know, one of the most powerful things is go and talk to, you know, some of your past clients or your clients and sort of like, hey, why did you hire us? You know, and really, you know, give them a little bit of a questionnaire of understand what was their sort of, you know, their pathway to hire you, and where they found you, and, you know, what might have they seen as, you know, a positive outcome versus like, what would you, if you could change anything about our product or service, what would that be? That kind of
Yeah.
gives you a little of, that insight of someone who's, been there, done that with you. So, yeah.
I love that question. A lot of people are afraid to ask that question. Like, why are
Mhm.
you doing business with me?
Yeah.
Because I was like, why are you asking that question? But it's a sincere question. It's like, obviously you trust me.
Yeah.
You've put your trust in me or my company. Why is that? And you let them tell you. I mean, they give you all kinds of information.
Yeah. A lot of times it
Yeah.
won't be the answer you think it's going to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's usually something a lot smaller than you thought it was.
Yep.
I think that kind of scares some people, because I think a lot of people like that, like business owners, a lot of them have that sort of the emotional, like, this is why people do certain things, like this is why people love us. Meanwhile, if they hear something slightly different, it kind of maybe breaks that that image of who they are, why people are buying it, sort of, or if they're like, oh, you guys are the cheapest, versus like, if the owner is like, hey, we have the best product.
Like,
And
what? Our story. It's supposed to be our story, man.
Exactly.
We put all this
it kind
money
of breaks that. So I think partly doing here's another thing too, is that when you do that research, you take a little bit of that kind of that emotional aspect of it, of that kind of like why we're here, and you kind of make it a little bit more analytical, or a little bit more scientific, so that you can start asking those questions, and it's just not a philosophy or a I'm trying to think of the right word, but sort of it's their, the vision of who they are. It takes it kind of down to, it grounds them. And I think that in seeing that kind of research, it kind of grounds it. So they, makes it a little bit more technical, more analytical, like not so, emotional, and why, but that's, it kind of helps you with that. So that's kind of, with some of that. So that's, asking, just ask, so.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some of the stories you have around what happens when people ignore their blind spots.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, part of sticking with the first chapter is and this literally just came up for us last week, was know your passwords. Because we're working with a client, and we're doing a little bit of social stuff with them and everything else, but all of a sudden, we needed some passwords for some of the social platforms. And of course, the person with all the passwords, was on a honeymoon with, their fiance, or they're now with their husband. It's kind of, and of course you need things like passwords and all those things, at the most inconvenient times. So part of those are just like, hey, this needs to happen right away. And no one thought to, it was on social. It was an email campaign that they really needed to get out. And of course, someone they thought had passwords was gone. So in that, so simple things like that. I'll go back to, one of the, maybe the last chapter of the book, but it's so important because a lot of people don't know this, don't think through this. But one of the first people that called me up that threw this little light bulb of an idea in my brain was, I got a call from a friend whose designer it's literally explained to them that when they called the designer to get their files, the designer had explained that they no longer had them because their computer crashed a month ago, and they lost all their files on their laptop. And my client calls up and says, what can we do? How do we solve this? What would you do? Is there any way for you to get that laptop from them and recover the files? And obviously panicked, because it was very, they needed something right away. And the first question I asked them was, well, where's your versions of all the brochures and, the brochures, the images, because they had, there was a lot there. So there was like all the photoshopped images from all the brochures, all the close cropped, all the iterations, all the different sort of variations of, all the social stuff as well that they had produced. And once I asked them, they were like, we don't have the files, and we don't know, what can we do? And I was just like, well, you're kind of out of luck here. So one of the first things I do, and I've learned this very early on, but I use multiple backups. I use like an online service for all my backup stuff, but I also encourage all my clients to get the originals from everything, all the photos, and something as simple as Dropbox or Google Drive. It's for what you save. It is one of the best investments that you're ever going to make when it comes to creating any kind of marketing materials or like that. Just spend a little bit of money, the $20 a year. It is worth it in its weight of gold, because that's kind of, it's one of those key things that a lot of people forget.
I use Google Drive all the time, man.
I'll say this on
like,
Google Drive that I found out kind of the hard way one time was whoever creates the folder in Google Drive owns that folder. And you cannot transfer, or you couldn't, like a year or so ago, you cannot transfer the rights, the ownership on a Google Drive folder.
You have to what you have to do is you have to make them an administrator.
It still won't let it. It still won't let it transfer ownership.
What?
Though. Yeah.
Oh, crazy. Okay. But they can log. But if you make them administrator, they can log in and access.
Yeah, but if you ever delete that folder by accident as the owner.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's old folder. So, little
things like that are like, the kind of stuff that if that freelancer disappears and
Yep.
And his Google account gets locked.
That's happened. That come to think of it, Sean, that's happened to me when I literally bought some old marketing stuff years ago, and it was basically the product was a shared Google Drive file.
Yeah.
And this person's business went away, and I tried to access it, and I couldn't access it. It was gone.
Yep.
So it was like
So you want to set up the Google folder for your freelancer or your people and say, okay, add everything to this.
Yeah.
And even if they originate a document, they need to originate it from within the folder so that you own it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, backups are, are the savior of any kind of project, because it's just, you don't know when you're not going to, like, it's one of those insurance policies that, for any project, because, as you're producing more and more, as we are now, like just the amount of social content and screenshots and all the various things that we produce, back it up and have it somewhere safe that you own and you have full control of. And, it's just, so either Dropbox or Google Drive, it
needs to be in your, cloud account, not the freelancers or the, the companies, the other companies' cloud account. Like somebody makes something on Canva, they could share it with you and you think you've got access, like we just said, but if it's in their cloud account and they ever close their Canva account.
Yeah. That's what happened to me. That was a bunch of Dan Kennedy stuff that I lost.
Yeah. And that's
crazy.
Had to go buy it again.
Well, this almost rolls into that next thing, which also too is a blind spot for a lot of people is contracts, and they don't have to be complicated. They just have to be simple and with an understanding, because if someone leaves or who owns the rights to various things as well, when it comes to illustrators or photographers, understanding what those you as a client, what you're paying for. And a lot of times people don't know, or it seems very complicated. But I would
agree with that. The easier you make it to read, the clearer, the better
for everybody.
You are.
Yes.
Because I've had clients that will say, if you make it one page, please make it a one page. Like, don't convolute it with jargon, legalese, jargon, all this stuff, like all these conditions. And I like, no, we're going to make this clear and simple, 3 or 4 paragraphs on a single page. That should that should be it. Right. Anything else is like, they start to get nervous.
Yep.
100%. And that's kind of like when you're working. Yeah. It's just small business owners, entrepreneurs, like they have so much to do. Like, just make it easy and for them to understand what are the restrictions in working with it, and also to like payment terms or all those things. Just keep it very simple, because when you don't have it, that's when you're going to get into sticky situations and trouble and things like that. And also, I think the mindset when there is a contract in place changes the relationship dynamic, so that in a way that everybody's taking the entire project and the relationship a little bit more seriously, like an actual sort of like, we're here to do business. We're just not kind of, we're just not having fun. We're just kind of creating something. It becomes much more of a business transaction, which for me, like the business of marketing is about business. It's just not about being creative. It's about sort of we're in here to provide a service just like everybody else. Sean, like for a writing service, like what we do, is providing something of value that someone can use to grow their business. Just like someone installing, new flooring or or painting a building. It's something like, if you don't do a good job in that, it can be the detriment of the business or whatever else. So we're, making sure that, on both sides, it's being, thought of as a professional service. And I think a contract sometimes helps with that, and understanding, where that lands, because people disappear, or people sort of like just they don't kind of respect the client's time either. And I think, stuff like contracts help tighten that kind of, relationship up a little bit
Yeah,
more.
I was just going to ask about that. Like, a big thing that I know creatives can get into is project creep, like the scope creep, where it's while you're doing this, can you go ahead and take care of this? And I mean, it happens in everything. It happens in construction. It happens in, in everything. How do you keep that from happening on a project management side, or either client side or customer side or whatever?
Yeah, no, 100. Great question. And again, it comes down to that. The quote about assumptions is like, just rather than assuming what people want, or what you think you might need, document everything. Just create. I love using Google Docs, because that way you can kind of share like all the notes from the meeting, and you can kind of itemize everything and be like, okay, from here's everything, in black and white. When I work on websites, I'll create an entire sort of like wireframe of the website. It's not just with language, but I also do, like a wireframe page by page of just blocking in content. Because it happens more on websites, because it's just sort of like, oh, we want to put a video here now. Oh, we'd like this. We wanted a tool here where people can, do a survey, or again, websites seem to kind of like, depending on what they need, the amount of time could exponentially expand very quickly if they're just wanting a specific tool in there or something. So with things like websites, I will take the time to create a wireframe, but it's just and then the contract, we don't sort of take payment or get a contract signed until that sort of the itemized list is all there. And partly what I do is I ask my clients, depending on actually, here's a really key thing, is that making sure that everybody, not just the marketing team, but share it with everybody else that might need something within the company as well. That's always something really important, because chances are that when you start something, someone in sales will be like, oh my God, it'd be great if we had this, or there's all those little teams, or all those little divisions that might want something or need something, or have that insight and experience, being like, oh, last time we did this, but we created that single page where everybody wanted more content. Oh, and then that's sort of, so partly the way to kind of alleviate some of that scope creep is making sure that everybody that might use or touch that product in some way, or that sort of the brochure or the website or that marketing piece, they all kind of have a quick look at it to make sure it is, that you can garner their insight off of it as well. So that it's sort of, you're also gaining that kind of knowledge of how they might use it. That's kind of where we've kind of, we kind of get multiple sign-offs on certain things. So from the top down, but also, laterally as well, just to make sure that we are also to producing the best product we can, and get the insights from as many maybe different team members, everybody from sales or customer service, from the product development people. We kind of get a little bit of insight from everybody. And it's not about putting a ton of cooks in the kitchen. It's just sort of like getting that kind of industry knowledge about here's where we are, and that's kind of where, scope creep happens when people keep on adding things in. And that's one way maybe to alleviate that, is getting more signatures, or getting more buy-in from more of the sort of team members that would touch and use that marketing device or that project. So
yeah, don't like wait till the company reveal, to like show all the different departments, like, hey, look what we just did. And then
the amount of times I've been there too, and you're just like, everybody's like, what, why did we do this? Because yes, I've been in those conversations where we've launched a new website, or done a really beautiful brochure only for the sales team to be like, we haven't sent out brochures in like 3 years, and why are we doing this again? And it's and that's really for me, I just being like loving small business. Like my parents, everybody, like, you know, a lot of my family all ran small businesses. So you understand like every dollar counts, you know, and it's sort of making sure things can be compounded and it's very usable. So my brain is on, you know, with everything that I do, it's just making sure like we're just not doing something for the sake of like being pretty or it's not a make work project, you know, to do something that it actually has an outcome, you know, a desirable outcome based on like, is it supposed to drive business or awareness or whatever it's supposed to do, make sure it does that, but also understanding like, if it needs to do that, why is it doing that? So again, circling back to doing that research and those outcomes, that's kind of key. So.
Are there any blind spots with AI? Do you talk about AI in your book? I'm just curious because I mean, we talk about that a lot. So I can imagine you probably got a whole chapter on that.
I do not. It was written before this, but yeah, the pace and to what AI is moving at right now is just it's incredible, and what they're coming up with, it's not. But actually, I'm just chatting with some developers as of this week to help me and actually essentially using AI to create helping. Let me sort of reframe this. Using AI to help small businesses create a better project brief. So using the research of like, so that's where I wanted to use AI. I think a lot of small business entrepreneurs, like a lot of people I talk to, it's out there, but they just don't know how to use it or why. And so partly in discussions with some people about developing a platform or sort of some a portal to help people create a better project brief, so helping them do that research, that the internal research, the external sort of competitive analysis, all of those things. And I think that's AI is great, but I think also it's got to be useful. Like how many times I'm seeing it on every platform I use right now, almost to the point where it's a distraction. It's kind of like a mosquito. It's just like, it's always kind of buzzing around. I'm just kind of like, it's great, but there's really specific things I'm using it for. And it's just, I feel like every platform, every sort of app that I use has it integrated. And I just don't like, why is it integrated here? And I just, wrong place. And I think it is that buzzword, but I think if we can, find those portals or find those places where it is like it makes sense to use it in a way it's easy to use, it's really intuitive, and someone at the end of it doesn't have to put a lot of work or effort into it. It's that's kind of where AI is going to really, I think, benefit, or finding those business use cases, not just like slapping it over into every app and in every possible place that we can. So what for you guys, when you talk about AI, what sort of, what are a lot of people talking about? How are they using it? Are they, pro, con, afraid, or what's,
I mean, I think people we've talked to, it's pretty much a pro, and like not quite sure why we're all jumping on the bandwagon because of where it could lead. It's like, it's great, but why do we keep feeding it? Kind of thing. It's like, it's crazy. It's almost a crazy dynamic, right? That we're making it more powerful by using it. But yeah, I've actually, I mean, I gotta be honest, recently kind of felt like you have like the mosquito thing, especially in Gmail and some other places that it's popped up. It's like right where the cursor is every time I go to type something. It's just like in the wrong spot.
It is,
but no, I think overall people we've had on are pretty bullish on it and use it on our show mostly for writing, maybe some research, things like that. I mean, this week, I think as we're recording this, ChatGPT upgraded their pictures. And I see a lot of chatter about that on the Facebooks and the groups. I haven't really played with it yet, but
there's definitely that ebb and flow of like how much of it is it. I don't want to say, I'm trying to think of the right word, but it's how much of it it's just like playing in a toy versus like what am I really going to use it for, on a day-to-day basis. And exactly. The sort of, hey, this is fun. Like everybody's creating those cartoons, the Mimi cartoons, but it's sort of like, give it a day or two and it's done. But it's kind of what is that business use case? And a little bit. I'm getting a little bit of that sort of the wave of like the 2008 internet, kind of when the internet came out and everybody was, everybody wanted to be online, and it was just the bubble kept on growing and growing, but no one kind of, everybody was building these hugely complex and very expensive websites just to be online and have that presence there, and it just, everything was just everywhere all the time, and it just you get that bubble. It's, how's it really going to be used? And I think that's there might be a little bit of a it's the ebb and flow of it will just kind of maybe come back until we're, how we're really going to use it. One of the things actually kind of concerns me, and Sean, I'd love to get your thoughts on it too, but Sam Altman was just talking about using copyrighted material. So not so much using it, but it's sort of like one of his comments as of late was, OpenAI, because we need to, the race to make the ultimate, model, doing so, we need to be able to kind of leverage copyrighted material. And for me, that as a creator, that's really, I don't know what they'd use, but also to that, it's having, what would be the use of it, and also to that kind of like, that's copyrighted material is copyrighted for for a reason. And as they say, well, of course creators are going to be able to get residuals from that and everything else, but I'm like, based on everything up to this point, I don't really see that happening, because they basically had the philosophy or model of like, do it now. It's what's the saying is like, it's better to do it now and ask for forgiveness and and ask and be denied, kind of thing. And I think that's kind of where it's
that's not true. They've not been compensated, or else you wouldn't see all these lawsuits going out right now.
Yeah, I mean they've already scraped every book ever published and everything else. But I mean, I don't, and I'm kind of torn. I mean, yes, they're making money off of it and all that, but I'm also like, if I'm in college and I write a paper, I mean, granted, I think they'll include more sources in the future, but even without that said, if I write a paper and a thesis and I read other people's books, and I consolidate that into my own writing,
right?
I don't have to pay royalties on that or pay for copyright on that. And that's basically what AI is doing. Yeah. Now they're not citing sources typically. They're starting to more than they used to, but you have to ask for them pretty much.
Yeah.
But also, I've got probably 1,000 books in my house that I've read, and when I have conversations with people, some of that stuff comes out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to pay the authors every time I have a conversation with somebody?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's a
gray, it's kind of a gray area,
very gray,
where you get into it.
Yeah, no, honestly, that's a great point, because I didn't, exactly. I'm thinking the same thing. Or when it's we cite certain things, or as we read, we're our own like AI model. Our brains are its own model from everything we've learned and experienced, and there is nothing of that. It's just sort of same as painters or anybody.
If I go to a museum and look at all the great painters, and I'm influenced by those painters on my next painting, how do I give those guys credit? And that happens all the time in the art world, right? Everybody's influenced by everybody else and trends and
music,
and
for instance, all the clips and everything else, and interpolation that everybody has from that. It's kind of as it's you learn from the masters or from that history, and it's hard not to kind of you cannot not be influenced by that, right? So in that it's but no, it's coming back to I think if we find those right use cases that make it really really beneficial and really easy for people to use and understand, and kind of give them the framework. Like for me, it was building a tool to do a better creative brief where clients would put in, like, I'm a roofer. I'm a roofer in Austin, and it's like, here are your 10 competitors, within 10 kilometers of where you are. Here's their here's their key values. Here's what they're, so basically helping, using AI to do that, do that research of understanding, who your clients are, and time, all those sort of things, where using maybe AI to help people ask questions they wouldn't know what questions to ask, of like, oh, when's the best time to do marketing for roofing, or in the area, when are the the ebbs and flows, and finding that maybe deeper research in that. And I think that's where finding a model, finding a platform, or building something around it so that maybe as a professional, you can, and this is, you know, again, part of this book of using that, you know, why I wrote this in a way that is that the framework, you create a, you know, yeah, it's sort of, you know, what questions to ask, and you just kind of walk the clients through either that they ask them or they can find that research and ask it themselves. So, but it is like a step-by-step in building those frameworks, I think, for AI to kind of be underneath and use as that tool to do that research. But man, I use it more than Google, because it's just, I can get the answers that I want.
Yeah,
You know, teaching my parents, you know, how to use it, because it's just you know, my mom's going to my mom's traveling, and I said, well, you know, she's like, I'm searching up Google what to do. I'm like, just ask kind of, you know, the AI chatbot, you know, I have a day here. What do I do? I love this and this and this and this. Can you make an itinerary? And it does. So that's, you know, so there's things like, again, that the model is specifically built for that. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of my 2 cents on it.
I just found this one. I just pulled this one up, and it's one of the, you know, custom GPTs in Chat GPT.
Yep.
Called Marketing Brief Assistant. You know, got a couple of choices to kick you off.
Yeah.
Integrated campaign briefing. Don't know what this does, but you know, it's like, yeah, business goals and objective. Yeah. So
Yep. Yeah.
And there's a couple different ones of those in there, but you know, yeah, I've used it for stuff like that for sure. I use it for all kinds of stuff, and I've definitely found Chat I'm now using much more personally, and I'm using Claude more professionally, just personally.
Ditto. I think that's, yeah. Because yeah, Claude and Perplexity for me, depending on how much research.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The language model Claude is just, yeah, so much more eloquent than Chat. So yeah, it's yeah. I that's exactly. I think as you use it more, you find the channels or the roads, like what you're going to use it for specifically. So, yeah. But yeah.
Well, back to Blindspots. Like, what are some other what have we not covered yet?
Well, it's a lot of, well, here's maybe even going back to some of the contractual stuff, is one of my friends, you know, she hired an illustrator and didn't know that there was contractual stuff when hiring, you know, external people. And another thing is, you know, as you hire some of the creative people, the who hires or who runs other things. So for instance, if they were like an example of, she was hiring through the publisher and illustrator, and she didn't realize that, you know, with through the publisher, that the illustrator owned the images. And then she saw these images from her book up on Etsy one day. She was doing like a meditation book, gorgeous sort of Indian inspired textures and illustrations and things like that. But she didn't realize that, you know, the illustrator owned the original rights to them. And so when she saw, you know, she was just on social and she saw, you know, he was selling these gorgeous sort of like pillows and things with some of their design and patterns on, she kind of freaked out, because it just sort of, she said, why did I hire an illustrator to do these images when, you know, he's benefiting off them as well? So she went back to the publisher. So it's got to be, again, it's those small little things that she had no idea to ask, you know, rights and licensing. And, you know, when you hire photographers or, you know, anybody that creates content for you, it's really important to get the kind of the who owns it for how long and how much are you licensing it for. So that's that's you know,
do you have like a checklist? Do you have like a checklist of those things in the book? Or
yeah, absolutely. Every chapter kind of ends with a checklist of, you know, here's, you know, on the project wrap, you know, here's what you should know after, you know, when you know, the internal prep, making sure you have all these little pieces, you know, what even sort of like what to use it to be inspired. Like, you know, the first chapter is like, after you've collected everything, you know, find some stuff that you maybe are inspired by, or, you know, or even sort of things like, John, you'll know the difference between like strategy and tactics. You know, what are the difference between, you know, doing like long-term strategy versus just doing something very tactical, which is kind of, you know, strategy, that long-term plan versus like, what do you need, right? Like, long strategy is much more that, you know, what are the goals long-term, and tactics are clients so focused on a lot of tactical things because they see, you know, the tactical things are a lot more tangible, that people see every day. It's sort of like, oh, I need a, I need some more social posts. I need, they see the outcomes of a lot of the strategy, but they don't think that there's, the bigger, 10,000 foot view strategy of what's the bigger plan and how it all connects. So something as simple as that, where a lot of clients just want to do and kind of pay for the more tactical things because they see that that's the more kind of tangible aspect of things versus when really they, they work best when there's an underlying sort of strategy that kind of comes with all that. So kind of walking back some of these sort of, design is just not, when you're doing a project, just, think about what is the ultimate goal and outcome for it in all of that. And that's kind of all of that. So, and honestly, the book has some quotes I've just learned, kind of along the way. Some of my favorites are, the first 90% of the project will take 90% of the time. The last 10% will take the other 90%. It's it's one of those things. Just it's always that meters before the finish line, the most kind of take the longest, the most excruciating. You don't realize like how it's the sign offs and all the things that kind of just tend to pile up in those last, of course, just before you need to get stuff off to print or published or posted and or go live. That's when everybody starts making those bigger decisions or those changes or those edits, and it's just the I'm sure you've been there, just the effort and energy that goes into that last, just getting a project across the finish line and just making people be aware of that. Yeah.
If you've ever built a house, that last 10% of like punch list and like cleaning up things and like that last 10% of a construction project just seems to drag on forever.
And that's just kind of like, hey, let's just be aware of that and budget that. Like that's kind of like, okay, that's part of that plan of understanding or knowing that these people need to see it and sign off. So bring them into the process maybe a little bit earlier of just, hey, here's where we are. Are you good with this? Yes, keep moving, so that it's not just again that here's the curtains open and the project gets shown, and that's when everybody has the opinions and changes and thoughts like that. So that's kind of like being understanding of how to also to thoughtfully bring people into the process and not make it a design by committee, which also is kind of the worst. And that's kind of the other side of this is too many people kind of spoil the broth, too many cooks spoil the broth kind of thing. So when is it appropriate to kind of bring people in and how to maybe manage getting everybody's thoughts and opinions on or their insights on some of these on the project itself, so it isn't, you're not sort of designing and the project isn't sort of done by committee, because that ultimately will slow everything down and make it make it tedious at best. Another one, these things always make me laugh because I can think of like multiple projects that we've been on, but it's the quote is if a project content is allowed to change freely, the rate of change will exceed the rate of progress. It's kind of to your point of like scope creep. As stuff comes up, it's sort of, if you don't kind of nail things down or milestones, and how do you properly, put those milestones in place so that, what are the proper milestones to have for you as a small business? Like where do you set some of those, where do you put those flags in the ground of like, okay, here's, by this time we need this, and by, and working with the creatives of figuring out what those are, but also being able to kind of hold everybody accountable to meet those, making sure all the changes and everybody has the right edits and everything in by certain times. Otherwise, if all left to the last minute, that's when all hell breaks loose.
I remember that when I was doing a lot more freelance copywriting, how I would send off the draft for edits, and man, if you did not have a firm rule that it was 3 days or whatever, 2 weeks later you're still waiting on it, and now you're got this project, you need to start a new one because you can't get paid till this one's finished. Like,
right.
Then all of a sudden you're just trying to juggle 3 projects at the same time. So stuff like that, like getting replies back from clients. I mean, how do you deal with that kind of stuff?
And like we're not to gang up on clients, we're also talking from the creative side, but also from the client side. The amount sometimes that they're juggling it's really, it kind of takes a load off their mind when they know that, the designer will have something done by a specific time, or here's how, the mechanics of the back and forth. And I think that comes down to that project planning of just putting that time in, or just asking, when things can kind of, like, when can they expect the next iteration of what you have, not to rush the project through, but just to put some, again, those flags in the ground of when to expect things. Because, we always like kind of, budgeting our time appropriately. So it's nice to kind of like, okay, I can expect to have it back by Wednesday. I can fit this project in. I can, like, and by Wednesday I'll have those answers, and then, we'll do the changes, and I'll have the next iteration by Friday. But it helps the entire team, manage their time a little bit more effectively, both from a client side, but also from a creative side, which, again, it comes down to, a lot of my clients I've had for years and years, like decades now, because it is, it's that relationship building and that understanding, of one another, and being respectful of each other's time and effort and energy that kind of goes into it. So in that, just laying that out and sort of being, being open, just asking a lot of questions, not assuming, when you're going to have stuff there back. But that's kind of key, is being very communicative, back and forth. And either as a client or as a creative, asking like, hey, when can I have this back? I'm in no rush, but when can I expect this so I can do this? But, a lot of creatives are worried, or vice versa, because it's just, I don't want to ruin the process or anything else. I'm like, no, we know we can, in the back of our minds, if you're a professional, how soon you can have this done, or your schedule. And that's kind of part of being a creative, being a professional in this industry, is understanding, how long it would take you to do things, or what your timelines are like, to execute it. And that just sort of helps, take a load off everybody's mind. That way, the client can kind of focus on three things, not, constantly worried about when they're, the next iteration things coming through. So something, again, just be highly communicative. And that's kind of, you build the relationship, you build trust, and that's also, a key thing. That's like, I've lost clients because the trust was gone, from that, or I made a mistake that, the relationship couldn't come back from, and it's kind of, some people,
because of a lack of communication, or
it just sort of,
things falling through
something happens. And because here's one of the biggest, I was talking to somebody about this, actually, a group of students, and I said, just, it's really, as much as you are sort of professional, it's also really important for you to come off as human as well. And human being, like, it's open up and create that relationship with that client, be professional about it. But, sometimes when I try to be too much, the ego forward, like, I know what I'm doing, I'm the professional. When I was too much of that earlier on, and I didn't understand, like, it's, these are just two humans trying to work together, for a common goal. Taking a step, the ego step back of, like, I know everything, I know what I'm doing. I think that it came down to when something happened with that project, the client was like, there was no, they're like, you're the professional, you messed up, we're going to move on. Right. It sort of became very black and white, where over the years, when I had a relationship built, much more of a human sort of, not casual, but casually professional about it. You kind of walk them through, there's a certain level of trust. But when I learned to do that more, when stuff happens, and it inevitably will, like a computer crashes for the day, or your internet, inevitably, when you need to send something off, the internet will be down that day, or something like that, it's seen through the lens of, like, you're human, not just, it softens the blow, I guess, if something happens. And that's kind of where,
never be afraid to show your vulnerabilities. I mean, that's a lesson I've learned in business.
Yes.
Never be afraid to show that you're not perfect and that you're not flawed in some way. And the worst thing you can do is make yourself be Superman.
Yeah.
No, 100%.
That's because your expectations are too high at that point, or, then when something goes south, then they're like, ooh, that just shattered my perception of you completely.
Something that's, I listened to this guy speak probably like 15 years ago, and it's one of those things that has stuck in my brain for this long, and I think about it on a quite regular basis. Is that there was a conference where one of the keynotes was he was a negotiator. So he would be the guy that unions or companies would hire to be he was the guy in the middle. I can't say that word right now, but the guy in the middle that would kind of look at both sides. I can't say that word as I'm trying to say. But he was the guy that would talk to both sides and help them come to an agreement in the middle.
The mediator.
The mediator, yes. And this guy was like one of the top guys, in North America to do this.
Yeah.
Like and the thing that he said that helped him the most was when he would walk in and talk to them, and as professional as high level that he was working at, he would say, I just walked in and wanted them to explain everything to me, and I wanted them to he said bluntly, it's like I wanted them to feel as though I was quote unquote like stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, can you in the simplest form explain to me how this works? And in that, it lowered everybody's sort of perception of, or that sort of the edge, the egos and everything else in the room, to which
the posturing
on both sides. And he was just like, it lowered everybody's energy. And it just, all of that, to which point he really was able to kind of get down to what were the most important things that were driving, the mediation on both sides. Like what did one side really, really want versus, other than all. And it's just, he got down to the human needs versus all the other sort of stuff that was like piled on top. And, if they're going to do this, we're going to do that, like all those other things. But it's like at the core of it, he's like, I was able to, just by asking questions, just by being like hyper inquisitive and just like acting dumb, like, oh, explain this to me like I was like a 5-year-old. Like, how does it, like, that's kind of sorry, not stupid wasn't the word. It's just like, tell me like I'm 5-year-old, like, explain to me how this works and why and what's this process. And he just, the amount of knowledge that they would share and how they would explain it also, I think, helped them understand, what they really wanted and needed in a very simple forms, in a really simple way. And to me, it's just like, let's make things simpler for everybody. And let's just kind of go down to, the raw of like what we need and how we, how to use it and how we can kind of work or benefit from a, so for me, when I talk to those clients, it's like you're telling me before, like be empathetic, be simple, be human, and, ask questions and just like, don't try to be the smartest person in the room. So
never be afraid to say, I'm not sure, I don't know. But because if you try to fake it, then it makes it even worse.
And now then you're just the facade that you're putting on, you're gonna have to keep working at that, and the energy it takes to do that. And I think a lot of people can just over time just start seeing through that, and it just doesn't feel authentic and real, and it just doesn't help a really good working process, a really kind of good relationship. And it's always, they're always looking for what's going to happen next versus like, what can we do next? And that's kind of, when you like building a house, when you work with great contractors or great suppliers or anybody else, you're like, the second they're done, you're like, do I have another list of like 10 of things you need, I need you to do, because it's just, there's that comfort and that sort of, that knowledge. And that's kind of, the base of a really great business of just being authentic and, that, again, giving more than you're sort of like taking. It's being, being there in so many different ways. So, and also to being able to, for clients to, part of this is, having clients being able to ask you and being, comfortable to ask you a bunch of questions, and I think with a lot of ego and posturing and too much of that comes in, it just, they close off, you close off, and it's sort of, it doesn't make for a very open, collaborative, environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, an hour has flown by, guys. So Brady, where can people find out more about you? Obviously the book is on Amazon, Blindspots Handbook. You also got I think a redirect from there, right? Blindspotshandbook.com.
Yep.
Anywhere else they can find you?
I'm doing LinkedIn is probably one of the LinkedIn, just Brady Dahmer. Brady liked a bunch, and Dahmer, unfortunately, like Jeffrey is, as was brought up at the beginning of the show. But that's kind of I'm doing newsletters and pushing up more content there and doing stuff on LinkedIn on a regular basis. But it is, the website and LinkedIn are probably the two key places that people can find me and track me down. But if anybody also has any questions or sort of like, hey, how would you? I'm in this situation. I'm always trying to give it back to the community any way possible. So if any of your listeners, have a situation that they are in with any of their sort of current or any of the agency or anybody that they're working with, and you're like, how would you solve this, or can you help me with that? Hit me up on LinkedIn, and we'll start communicating, and more than happy to kind of help them through those situations, and in any way possible. So that's it's a tough one sometimes. So yeah, they can find me those two places. So yeah.
All right, and I'm going to put the LinkedIn in the comments as well, so that people can find it there. So yeah,
guys, this is it's been an awesome time. It's between the beer and the conversation, this is you've got something pretty awesome going here.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and you got a jump start on the weekend with your beer, so being on Pacific time,
it's still early. It's 1 o'clock. Got lots of time left. Yep. So
yeah. So.
Yep.
All right, Brady. Well, thanks for joining us. Sean and I are going to stay on a little bit longer, close out the show, but appreciate you joining us today. And we'll be posting a link on our show page to your book where our listeners can find it.
Much really. It's a blast, and really appreciate you guys having me, and great conversation. And can't wait to listen to it. So appreciate it, guys. Have a great weekend.
All right. Thanks. You too, man. See ya.
See ya.
Good stuff.
Yeah. All right.
Brady Dahmer. And I think the link that he gave me is blindspotshandbook.com. That's one of the that's the website, but we'll post it on our show page there. People can find it. And episode 390 is where you can find this. And Sean, it's been fun, interesting conversation. And we might be having a guest next week. I got to confirm.
Okay.
On the topic of cold reading.
Oh, we tried this before. So it's not April Fool's it on Friday. It's on Tuesday, I think this year. So I think we're okay. Yeah, that'll be fun if you get that to go through.
I'm trying to confirm that, but yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. It's always an interesting topic. Yeah, I know we've talked about it a few times. I think you've got a book. I think I've got a couple of books on cold reading, and so I've got a couple of guests that I've reached out to. One that does he's involved in some covert CIA stuff or former CIA stuff. So should be interesting if we can snag him and bring him on the show. But But yeah, stay tuned for that. And as always, you can find us persuasionbythepint.com. You can find us on all of your favorite podcast platforms, whatever you listen to your favorite podcast. Sean, enjoy your weekend. What do you got going?
Couple sessions.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're involved in,
a little psychedelic session going on. So
beautiful. Sounds like a blast. Yeah. I don't want to get too much information.
Yeah.
But we'll see you guys next week on episode 391. Thanks for listening.
See ya.